Greetings, everyone. This is Lisa Hampton, Field to Rim. On behalf of Field to Rim and Sheltered by Sports, we wanted to have an opportunity to extend our heartfelt condolences to the families of Rondale Moore. As you all know, he's a former NFL player who played for the Atlanta Falcons, but last played for the Minnesota Vikings. At the age of 25, it is believed that he committed suicide. And since such time, there's been a call on behalf of members, current and past, of the NFL to demand, if you will, that the NFL does something to address the issue of mental health. So what I wanted to do with this live broadcast today is, one, extend my condolences, but also share some thoughts and concerns relating to the issue of suicide, that which transpires within professional sports. And for those of you who follow hip hop, we've had two young artists within the last 60 days who, between the ages of 21 and 25, also purportedly committed suicide. And that's also Little Papa, okay? And then we're still trying to determine what happened to Party, who was found unresponsive, and his family is calling on an investigation. That being said, let us explore the role of the NFL. I say with all due respect that I know respectfully that some of the current and past players are demanding that the NFL as a corporate entity address the issue of mental health. But what I want to be able to add to the conversation is what, if at all, would be the role of the Players Association. Let us remember that there are two separate entities. There's the corporate side of the NFL, but there's also the Players Association. And no different than the NBA and Major League Baseball and hockey, those entities are generally top heavy with regard to 6- and 8-figure salaries being paid to members of the Players Association, whose goal and duties are to be able to provide programs and services to address the needs and the concerns of NFL, Major League, hockey, as well as NBA players. In fact, in a recent show that I did regarding Krista Chen, the strategic advisor for the NBA, her salary is $754,000 per year. She's 62 years of age, respectfully. And one may ask, at that stage of her life, is this best the role for her as it pertains to meeting the needs and concerns of the current generation, the Anthony Edwards of the world, respectfully, notwithstanding the Jalen Brunson and the host of other players. She's relatively been involved in the lives of the older gentlemen who've played the game, such as the likes of the Rodney Stricklands, the Steven Jacksons. But when you look to $754,000 in issues like suicide and alcoholism and drug addiction and gambling, and some of the issues that plague the new generation of the NBA, NFL, Major League, and hockey, one may ask, how could that be used? Rex Chapman, the class of 1988, the same class as Rodney Strickland, who came out of DePaul, who recently was honored with a jersey retirement and now ranks #1 in the NEC for the Sharks men's basketball team at Long Island University. Rex dropped the book not long ago, and I did a review for him. He was sharing the book with Dominique Wilkins, NBA legend from the Atlanta Hawks. And I had the opportunity to read the book, an excellent read with regard to dealing with being ostracized by the league, facing mental issues himself, also being plagued, if you will, by pain pills, drugs, alcohol addiction. And so when you read his story and you think about the Allen Iversons, respectfully, who is currently dealing with sobriety, the Rodney Stricklands dealing with sobriety, 15 years in, he alleges, and Allen Iverson is now working on close to almost a year and his step and stages towards sobriety. You wonder if income like $754,000 could best be used by individuals like them. To give the Kenny Anderson's former NBA player who also coached at Fisk University and suffered a stroke, but also had embattlements with alcoholism. One may ask, if you were to compensate gentlemen like them and send them into the ranks of NC2A programs, both Division 1, 2, and 3, and also the opportunity to confer with and mentor younger players in the league, the Trey Mans, the Anthony Edwards, those players and a host of others, what might those players gain from them as opposed to giving one individual $754,000 to do what? We see in the same issue, top-heavy salaries with the NFL. And one may ask on that side, the association side, what exactly are the executive directors and the vice presidents of player development doing? That one might call upon, respectfully, the NFL as a corporate entity, that which oversees the draft and that which oversees franchises and team ownership. Why are they responsible for mental health and not part of the collective bargaining agreement on the table as the Players Association go forth? I know that Reeves is doing a wonderful job in his capacity with the NFL as the player rep, but at the same time, I remember the days of Gene Upshaw. As you all know, I have a strong background as an analyst and in research. So I researched with particularity and specificity what Gene Upshaw was doing during the days that he was in the NFL. Fast forward where we are today, you could call on Club 88 members from the Dallas Cowboys, the likes of Dez Bryant and the Michael Irvins. You can ask for the Philadelphia Eagles, former Atlanta Falcons, Michael Vick. You can call on Ray Lewis of the Ravens, and you can ask those gentlemen to step up with you and compensate them accordingly so that they would be able to provide mentorship services. These are individuals, especially when we think of the Ray Lewises and the Michael Vicks, who know what it's like to experience a multitude, everything from injuries to scandals to false incarceration and imprisonment. They know what it's like to have to overcome barriers, if you will. They know what it's like to encounter individuals, both fan and corporate leadership alike, who challenge mainstream, who challenge them as individual players. So I think it would be incumbent upon the NFL, through the player side, to take it upon yourself respectfully and not look for the corporate side. The corporate side is not there to help you. I mean, we need to come to terms with that. The corporate side of professional sports is there to do one thing and one thing only: profit. And in their profiting, their ultimate goal is to make sure that the teams, the owners, the franchises, the sponsors, the advertisers, investors, that they are taken care of. The purpose of the Players Association has always been that they take care of the needs and the concerns of the players, and you do that through collective bargaining. But you also, when you keep saying, let the NFL do something, we want to hear from the NFL on mental health. You are the NFL, Reeves. You are the NFL. Players, you are the NFL. You are the ones who can make the difference. What is it that you're expecting of them, considering Moore's death? And what about Marshawn? Another individual just a few months ago who in a single car accident purportedly shoots himself with a self-inflicted gunshot wound. At least that's what they want us to think, right? We've asked for an investigation. We would like to be able to see that one happens. I think that's important, especially wherein you have police encounters. And I respect LEs, I really do. But I also note that wherein you have an individual who was alone in a wooded area in proximity to the arena and purportedly shoots himself in the head upon a police encounter, one might ask what really led up to that. We know that they had gone out initially a day earlier and even the morning of his death for a wellness check. What was the purpose of the wellness check? And so let me say this to you all as athletes, with all due respect. Are you all checking in with each other? I mean, that's a question you need to ask yourself. Are you checking in with each other to the extent that you're wanting to make sure your well-being is correct? Someone said last night over dinner, they said, if these individuals had family and friends and teammates who really cared about them, would they in fact be subjecting themselves respectfully to suicide? And my response was this, and I say this respectfully: suicide has to be looked at differently and through different lenses. And what I mean by that is this: for some of us, suicide is a cop-out. For others, suicide is a selfish move. And for others, suicide is no different than hospice. It's a willingness of a person who says that I might be going through sickness, disease, facing death, and I choose this route. But it also doesn't necessarily mean that one who chooses to end his or her own life is suffering mental health issues. And so we have to balance that conversation. There are at times an intersectionality between suicide and mental health, but it is also a point in a person's life where he or she decides they are okay with ending their own life on their own terms. And we in the African American community particularly need to be careful about the narratives we create around the issue of suicide. Because we want to first make sure that that is in fact what is happening. We see that a lot with missing and exploited Black girls and boys, wherein they're certain that these college students are killing themselves. Are they? Is it really suicide? Or is there something else that's going on that we might need to inquire about? And until such time that we're able to do that, let us be very careful about how we define one's death, particularly until such time that we had the necessary evidence from medical examiner's office, toxicology reports, and the like. But wherein we are sure, and there's enough evidence that suggests that a person decided to take his or her own life, let us be careful about how we do that. If we remember a former basketball player from Georgetown University, Sidney Wilson, and there were accusations about whether or not what Sidney did in her police citizen encounter would amount to suicide. And if that was what one might call a death wish. Again, when we're looking at the issue of suicide, let us look at the totality of the circumstances and an effort that we're able to make the right decisions before we, in fact, define that a person has chosen to take his or her life. But where there's enough evidence, as they suggest in Moore's case, the question might ask, why? Why would this 25-year-old decide to end his life? The same thing with Michonne. Just less than 72 hours before he purportedly killed himself, he made a touchdown. So this is what I think of when I think about professional athletes purportedly dying by suicide, wherein the investigation is still open. And I look to gambling now, and I'm not making any accusations, but it's something that we need to take into consideration. Where we find professional athletes taking their own lives, especially where someone just took a touchdown. We then ask ourselves, was it the touchdown that did it? Were you under some pressures while you're playing the game? Were you afraid of successes that you're having in the space of your professionalism as an athlete? Is someone expecting things of you? We know that the NBA, for example, is facing congressional hearings and an investigation by the Department of Justice as it pertains to gambling in the NBA. And we see the same thing with the 29 athletes that were arrested connected with NC2A Division I gambling. There's a lot of pressure on athletes now as a result of legalizing sports betting. When the former Commissioner David J. Stern was alive, he never wanted gambling to be associated with the NBA brand. But under new leadership of Adam Silver, who served under Stern as a deputy commissioner, but also as his chief of staff, he knew David didn't want gambling associated with the NBA brand. Today, I call it the game: gambling, alcohol, marijuana, and escorts. That is the new NBA. And it works the same throughout all of the sports now. And so wherein there are individuals that are associated with, respectfully, I want to be careful how I say this. I'm really relevant. You all know that. And I'm not the least bit concerned about exercising my First Amendment right in free speech in this capacity. But I want to be respectful about the next statement that I make. So give me a second to make sure this comes out right. There was an incident about a year ago in which an athlete's home blew up. And we know that that particular athlete was associated with allegations of gambling. But then one questioned whether or not that was an accident of a gas line that just caused the home to blow up, whether it was a warning, or whether or not it was his way of saying he wanted out. Okay? And so these are things that we need to take into consideration as we evaluate incidents that are happening to our professional athletes. Let us not be so quick to immediately surmise this is suicide. This person wanted out. I do recognize when an athlete is faced with injury, they go through what I call 5 steps. First, it's a state of brokenness. Many professional athletes, and I think about Allen Iverson when I think about this as well, and I'm pairing from the Trey Mans to the Allen Iversons, respectfully, and even in the Flags, Cooper, that generation. The pressures that are associated with a lot of athletes to be caregivers for their families. And Allen Iverson was just that. And so wherein you're under that microscope of the world watching you, the world having expectations of you. But at the same time, you are also expected to be a caregiver of your family financially and a community at large, like Cooper. And you, who came out of Duke and has similar stories, of carrying the weight of his family. And that's an admirable thing to do. But at what expense? Does it come at an expense of alcoholism? Does it come at an expense of drugs? Does it come at an expense of sex addiction? Are there other addictions associated to it? Do these individuals, if at all, can they become overwhelmed? I remember when Luka was playing in the championship and he hit the finals and he was injured. And I did a story on inspiration and injury and what it may have taken for him and Kerry Irvin to get to that stage of the finals. And the baggage that was associated with that and coming and having to play under such pressure, right? And so wherein you have athletes having to do that. Even we just recently heard about the entertainer Ray J. And they talked about how Ray J literally was performing, having just come out of the hospital. How true? The jury's still out on that, right? But based on what we had been able to verify, the veracity of those statements have been accurate. And in verifying the veracity of those statements, we come to learn that he was in fact hospitalized. He does in fact suffer from a heart injury, but his manager, Ms. Santiago, made clear he was still under contractual agreement to perform. A lot of professional athletes have to go through life the same way. They're under professional obligations, but at the same time, there are other obligations like to family and to community. And maybe to gambling too, right? And so wherein these athletes are faced with this issue now, what do we do with that? And so as the NFL is asking about bringing forth programs and services for mental health, you, the players, can do that. You don't have to look outside of the NFL, the NBA, Major League, or hockey to secure among yourselves the necessary programs and services to aid athletes in dealing with mental health issues. The areas that need to be considered, I call broken. Some people are just broken by life, by circumstances. You sustain an injury, you don't know what that's going to do for your career, you don't know what it's going to do for your family, so you are broken by that. Then those who are broke, meaning they are financially broke. There are no resources and they're afraid. And that fear can result in a person deciding to end his or her life. You also have brokenhearted. I look at the situation that just took place with Pierce, the NFL player, along with Rika, and from the WNBA, and the national attention that those allegations of domestic violence and stalking has resulted. I hear this young aspiring player with a $16 million contract is with a WNBA player making about $76,000 a year. I'm not saying she's chasing the bag. That's not what I'm saying at all. But what I am saying is he obviously cares for her. She's about 3 years older than him. The relationship took a toll, and at some point people could have stepped in for the both of them to make sure that before it escalated in a manner in which it did, that he had the opportunity to get the help that he needed, and maybe she did too. But even in that circumstance, what programs and services are available for domestic violence? What programs and services are available for relationships to allow for people to have the type of therapy and counseling that they need within the ambit of professional sports, and to keep their personal lives just that personal? A similar situation with a member of the Gamecock, another member of the University of South Carolina. We saw another situation with another female athlete, formerly played for Clemson, transferred to Vandy. Okay, now she's kicked out altogether. I was expecting her to go to the WNBA. Again, in relationships that resulted in domestic and domesticated issues that could have otherwise been resolved if the proper programs and services were being made available. So brokenhearted. So there's the other B. When you're brokenhearted, sometimes you do things and say things and you react and cause other people to act accordingly. And that could also result in eventually emotional stress and challenges that can lead to suicidal thoughts. Then we also have to look at what's happening with people who are broken down. When an individual sustains an injury, they are broken down. They're just broken down. Okay? So you have to deal with individuals who are broke financially, brokenhearted, those who are broken down, and then those who actually get to the point where they want to break apart. They don't want to be a part of the association. I often hear Stephen Curry refer to the NBA as the association. And so we'll respect that for all four sports, right? So you have a lot of people that get to a point in their career, they don't want to be a part of the association anymore. They've been there, they've done that, and they want out, but they're still under contractual obligations. They don't want to play under injuries anymore. I remember an interview with Candace Parker before she departed from the WNBA at the top of her game. I still think Asha Wilson is it. And Nike hopefully one day will do the right thing by her. But I applaud all of them for everything that they've done. But it was Candace Parker's story that touched me in the sense that she talked about what it meant to be expected to play through injuries. And you get to a point where at some point in time in your career, you say it's time to walk away from it. When you break apart from the league, from the association, what happens? Are you actually breaking apart from the fraternal order, the sorority, if you will, or are you simply just breaking ties in terms of no longer participating on athletics, in terms of your athleticism, and what programs or services are readily available for that? I'm not talking about retirement programs that takes you from being a player to a coach and to executive management. I'm not dealing with it through that lens. I'm speaking about it through the lens of when you finally say to yourself, I played this game, I've been there, I've done that, I don't want this anymore. When you become the Cheryl Swoops and the Lisa Leslie and the Tarasis and the Rebecca Lobos, right? And the list can go on and on, right? Respectfully, ladies, when you get to that point, what's available for you? And so having named those women, let me connect that respectfully to the WNBA and what's happening even with the Angel Reese's, right? And every little thing that Angel does, she's under the spotlight. How she dresses, how she wears her hair. We're seeing the same thing out of LSU, Floja, right? Come up through the same thing. What services are we providing to these ladies to say, I know that you are expected to move forward in this space. I know that you are a professional athlete, right? You are a professional athlete, and we're honing that word as we move forward from NC2A to the major leagues, right? The understanding of what it means to be a professional. But does that also mean that when we recognize that they're professional, is it simply that you go from Division 1, 2, 3, basketball, football, baseball, hockey, and just like that, you have to become a professional, and just like that, you're expected to know how to act and how to conduct yourself, how to deal with a fan base, from collegiate to advertisers and sponsors and investors and a fan base of millions with expectation. The Caitlin Clarks, the same thing. She's under a lot of pressure as well. So we're not just dealing with what's happening with the men in sports. We also want to be able to tap in to what is going on in professional sports that is allowing for so many of you to feel like you're drowning. And having had the opportunity to confer with some of your spouses, let it be said respectfully that some of the wives, girlfriends, and or partners are going through similar issues that might require counseling. I remember an interview done not very long ago that sparked national attention that was conducted by Aisha Curry, right? And she said she thought she was going to be the it girl, and she was conversing about her husband, and that she thought he was going to be a coach, but he's now a player. And she thought that she would have this aspiring career as an actress. And a lot of people took issue with her, and they should not have. That was her way of being able to express what was important to her and what she was expecting out of life. And now she looks at her life as motherhood. And she's saying, okay, I'm here. But my husband is doing A, B, C, D, and E. You listen to her, but then you also listen to those whose voices you don't hear. I get a lot of information about some who are victims of domestic violence, NFL, Major League, as well as the NBA, and the conversations in which they don't want to have. Some of them who are also complaining that their mates have transferred sexually transmitted diseases into them, and they're not in committed relationships, and so they're worried about what life will offer them. And so wherein you all are now looking for programs and services to ensure unto you that your mental health is in place, intact. I refer to mental health as men heal. Pull from that. Mental, men, and health heal. So mental health is about men heal. And it is something that I developed in the Rondale, the Allen Iverson Way upcoming documentary. We're still doing our own. AI did his story. We're doing history. Okay? It's a big difference. We like what he did with his memoir and with the documentary, and that's great for them. I respect that wholeheartedly. But that, respectfully, is his story. I'm giving you history. But with Men Heal, I talk about the mental health programs and services that are available for professional athletes. And I talk about it through the lens of different athletes. Kevin Love, for example, Paul George. And we talk about some of the programs and services that he has, and meaning I do. I discuss those programs and services, but I do it through a different lens. I have the opportunity of connecting with others in that space to find out exactly what is it that they're looking for, or what were they looking for when they entered the league, and what expectations. And I found that that's an operative word. Expectations. What are your expectations? And when we look at what's happening now with the NEAL, name, image, and likeness, something that we advocated for years with congressional hearings and local and state governments, and what that might look like for sponsorship and advertisement, and how some players will make it and others will not. According to the High School Federation, the numbers for high school football and basketball look something like this: 1.1 million high school football players throughout the United States, and 754,000, give or take, high school basketball player, men, women's sports. And then we look to see what happens with that. We look to see the number of those individuals who are actually going to make it. And so the numbers look something like this. For D1 programs, imagine less than 25,000 will enter into D1 programs. Number one, D1 programs, right, for basketball. And then of that number, how many are going to make it to the NBA? And the same be true when we think about how we analyze the numbers for football. And so wherein you don't have children K through 12 who were raised, and I say this respectfully, with a household or families who are not focusing on, from the minute the child is born into this world, you're putting a basketball or a football inside of the crib. Imagine if the same energy that went into producing future basketball and football, baseball, and hockey players, and other sports as well, went into academics. You wouldn't have so many people who feel like if they fail or do not succeed in a particular sport, that ending their life becomes what it is. And again, let us not attribute every decision of suicide as a decision of a person who's suffering from mental health, that we might need to explore some of the reasons why a person may have decided to end his or her life. It may have nothing to do with mental health. Some of the people could be ill, and other physical illnesses. There are some people who suffer from HIV/AIDS. They don't want to sit around and wait and die. You have other people who don't know how to deal with financial stresses, and as a result, ending their own life becomes their option. How do we get to the place where we learn to respect that and not label them and not judge them is important. But for those who do feel like they are suffering suicidal thoughts, 988 is a national suicide hotline. 988 is the national suicide hotline. But I also encourage you to link in. You know, I know you have LinkedIn, which is a network for business, but I talk about LinkedIn as in linking in with people, link up with people, you know, hook up. And I'm not talking about the hookup for the sexual hookup, one night stands. We're not talking about that. I'm talking about learning how to hook up with people, connect with people, wherein you are a professional athlete and you believe, despite all these people you're around, you have nobody. Then my prayer for you would be for you to reevaluate the people that you're around, and that you come to the term to say, the people that I'm around are not able to provide me life support. You know, when we think about life support, we think oxygen, we think dialysis, pulmonary services, all of that. But life support are the people that are around you. And so ask yourself, who's around me? Who's around me? Who's in my inner circle? And who that is in my inner circle can I link in and link up with, and then hook up with when I'm having a problem? Is there that person that I can call and say, I'm struggling today. I'm going through emotional issues. I have mental issues. I have financial issues. And know that you can trust And that's the issue for a lot of people. Know that you can trust you are safe with that person. And a lot of us, we don't have people that we could be safe with. We really don't. And wherein you don't, you could be around a lot of people, but a lot of people are not in you. They're not supporting you. They're not your life support. So who is your lifeline? Who is your life support? And I think that's critically important. When I hear from some of the women who are wives of professional athletes, that's the first thing I ask them, who are your life support? And the first thing I'm always hearing is, Lisa, I don't really trust so-and-so, and I don't want to be around so-and-so, and this is this and this is that, and I get it. There are times when you feel like you're in a circle of people, but you're not in a circle at all. They're running circles around you. You may very well be running circles around them, but they're not part of your inner circle. And so my hope, even for a lot of you women that are associated with members of professional sports, is that you find your place. A lot of you deal with the issues of adultery, infidelity, multiple sex partners, lack of commitment in relationships, and a host of others. We recently heard RG3 go back and forth with Cam Newton over a comment Cam Newton made. And Cam Newton, a former NFL player for the Panthers and now an ESPN correspondent, made a comment with regard to women who have so many children lose their value. And I'm going to say I understood what he meant. Wherein as a man, you're looking for a woman for a specific reason, and that reason only generally is for sexual gratification, you may very well find that if she's had 1, 2, or 3 children, that sexual gratification that you thought you were going to seek from her and or attain from her is no longer available. So I can respect his position in that. And we ought to be comfortable hearing from men so that we as women can grow. And men ought to be comfortable hearing from other men so that they can learn also. And so I recognize the point that he was making, and I respect it, to be honest. As a woman, I do. Equally so, I respect Jazzy, which is the woman that he was in relationship with, who just gave him his 9th child. And she has 2 of his children, the 8th and the 9th one. And she did an interview on him engaging in anal sex and how painful it is and how much displeasure she had in it and how much she hates it, right? And so, hey, the cat is skinned both ways. So I respect what she had to say. And so when you balance those public conversations between 2 people, you learn from them. And maybe for him, this was a relationship that was supposed to go one way. Ultimately, it resulted in 2 children. And maybe this loss of luster there. It doesn't mean that he doesn't love her or that he doesn't respect her. Or it just was a general statement where he's basically saying, hey, if I'm in a relationship and a woman gets pregnant, or after a while you have so many children, the body's not doing what it's supposed to do. Quite frankly, I'm not a lesbian. I'm heterosexual, proud heterosexual. Don't need no help. Thank you. You do you. I'll do me, respectfully. But for those who, look at Jasmine, the woman that he's with, I think she's beautiful. She still appears to have her figure and everything intact. Maybe he was not talking about her. Why is that important to the conversation of suicide? Because when a man makes a public comment like that, who is adversely impacted by that? Who's the first person you think of? The women that are in his life. What would that do for her mentally, emotionally, or psychologically, right? So let us be careful how we make comments that could be perceived to be general, especially if we're talking about mental health and how it impacts professional athletes. Let's also talk about how it might impact the men and or the women in their lives, because we're also talking about women who play professional sports too. Okay, so again, I just wanted to jump on today and do something different with regard to the issue of Rondale. And we know him in Atlanta and in Minnesota, from 2 different worlds. And I was shocked that a decision was made to end his life. And so I'm going to close out saying this. Until such time that the medical examiners have officially ruled it a suicide, I like to sit and wait and see. But for the conversations that members of the NFL are now demanding and or requesting that one have, I respectfully say it starts with you all. That's the power of the Players Association. You all are top heavy. We're paying millions of dollars in salaries to the executive directors, people over these programs and services you're not getting. So it's not the NFL or the NBA on the corporate side. It's not their responsibility. It's your Players Association. Go to them and make sure that they are doing exactly what they're supposed to be paid to do. And that is making sure that you get the programs and services that you need. But I think in this particular space of trying to analyze what is available, respectfully, for each and every one of you, I don't think you need to be paying the Krista Chins and the people like them on either sport that type of money. I think it's necessary that you find the Allen Iversons, the Kenny Andersons, the Rex Chapmans, the Ray Lewises, the Michael Irvins, the Des Bryants. Find those gentlemen and say, listen, we're going to split this salary up. You grab 100, you grab 100, you grab 100. You take this many players, you take that many players. Split the leagues up. NFC, AFC, East, West, depending upon which sport you're in. Same be true for Major League and hockey. And use those players, who've been through something. The Montanas and the Marinos. You use those players who know what it is like to endure with injuries, finances, marriages, relationships, illness, sickness. Get those individuals and have them to mentor the future generation of professional athletes. And I think if you do that and they have those individuals that are available to them, it might assist and or curtail the number of crises that are now impacting professional sports. Thank you for joining me. I'm Lisa Hampton on Field to Rim. Love is selflessly authentic, having all money, power, talent, opportunities now. I appreciate you joining me, and let me chime off.